Hey, this is Chantel Girardi from Online Business Marketing, and today we're going to be talking about how you can leverage a podcast, whether or not you've got your own podcast and you're a host of a podcast, or whether or not you are a guest of a podcast. And I'm going to explain to you why this is important in your podcast marketing. For many, 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 many years, probably 15 years, I did not have a podcast. I only had I was a guest on podcasts, and that was my strategy. And that strategy worked incredibly well. However, I did launch my podcast in January this year, was it? Or last year? Must be last year. April last year, can't even remember, called the Meaningful Marketing Podcast. And I must say, it's probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do is name a podcast. It's kind of like a tattoo. Once you choose it, you're kind of stuck with it for a while. It's like your business name. So I must be honest, it was something that was a bit difficult to do, but we will go through some of the processes today to help make it a bit easier for you. So today we are going to be talking about how you can use a podcast to build your credibility, get more visibility online, and use it as a lead generation tool, because podcast marketing can be a lead generation tool. But one of the most important things about podcasting is the excessive amount of content you can create from it. I can tell you right now, a lot of business owners are like, oh my gosh, we're continually having to create content. When you do a podcast, it can get repurposed into so many different formats across all different platforms. And I'm going to show you today. I'm going to give you an SOP for that. And you can repurpose all that content. And the good thing about it is that if you have a virtual assistant or someone else managing your marketing, they can take it and they can do it. So a lot of the complaints that I often get is that if you've got like a marketing manager or an in-house marketing person, an offshore, it doesn't matter what, they always go, oh, they never quite say it like I would say it. Guess what? When you're repurposing podcast content, it is you saying it. It is you having sent it. You've got the audio, you've got the transcript, and you may even have a video for it as well, which means they can simply snip, and create content. And with ChatGPT now, you've got absolutely no excuses. So why should it be part of your marketing? When I owned health, wellness, and fitness centers for 25 years, I always said, if you don't understand the why, you're never going to do it. If I just tell you to drink water, you go, it's not that important. But if I tell you why it's important, you're more likely to do it. So why is having a podcast strategy important? Well, firstly, it's for credibility and authority. Often when I want to apply for apply for different things, and people say to me, can you show me evidence of you speaking? Hold on a sec, I want to see how clever you are. Like, do you have any tips? Do you have any insights? Can you share some of your results with us? So it builds this credibility and authority in the marketplace, because the reality is that there's a gazillion of you. I know we all think we are special, and you are to a degree, but the whole thing is that really there's gazillion like industries just like you. So the only way to stand out, unless you want to twerk, okay, because there are the TikTokers, that's fine. Maybe you want to twerk, maybe you want to dance, maybe you want to do a little routine. I saw that one trending at the moment where they get you to put your arms up in the wall. You show someone to put your arms up in the wall, and they put their arms up in the wall and say, check this out. And when they do it, they pull their pants down. I mean, if you want to get business like that, you follow that trend, right? But if you want to have, to build your authority and to build your credibility in the industry, it's completely different, because this is your voice, this is your personality, this is your juice, your glitter, your jam, and people can connect with you. Not only that, but people like to consume content like on the run. So for example, when they're walking, when they're cooking dinner, they'll consume content, especially if it's interesting. So increasing your credibility and authority helps you build know, like, and trust. People can trust your voice. Number two is creating content for your team to repurpose. As I said earlier, you really want your voice, your brand voice, and the way that you say things, and the way your point of difference and the way that you communicate things, you want that sprinkled throughout your content. And it's so much easier for marketing managers or yourself just to take that content and snip it up into 1,000 different pieces, and then add it to your content library. And now all of a sudden, whenever you need content to do any sort of promotion, you've got that quote that you said, and you might have the video, or perhaps you've just got the audio, but you can now use that. In Reels, Stories, I'm going to go through the whole lot, YouTube, but yeah, it's so much easier for your team just to be able to take that and repurpose it. The third part is about attracting speaking gigs or PR opportunities. Recently, I got approached by a dance fitness company in Sydney. They're paying me to come down and speak for the day at a conference. And the reason is because they saw my little reels, my repurposed reels from my podcast, me speaking about marketing. And because I said I don't health, wellness, and fitness centers for 25 years, they went, oh my gosh, someone who did that and does this is great. We want you. So it was a no-brainer for them to call me. And organizers also want to see whether or not your tone and feel will be right. So for example, when I emceed an award down at the Central Coast, they want someone with a bit of a sense of humor, someone who's going to keep the crowd, entertained. And they obviously can see that from the way in which, I talk on my podcast and in my videos. They'll be able to at least have that as something. And you can add it to your media kits as well. So often they'll say to you, please, can you send me some evidence of you speaking, and let's see if you're actually relevant to our audience. And then the last one, which I actually had to add into ChatGPT, because ChatGPT doesn't know everything. And that's why human intelligence is so important. And I'm not threatened by it as a marketing strategist because I know more. But the fourth one is you can actually use it in your awards applications as well. And you can also use them in case studies. So for example, if you're applying for an award, you can use your podcast episodes because they often ask for proof of concept, or alternatively, they might ask you for some case studies. So you can send or you can use your podcast for case studies as well. We take it one step further and we use it as educational content. So if a client comes to me and says, oh, I really don't know how to set up my Google My Business listing, and we've gone through it already, like one-on-one, and maybe they go, oh, we've got a new team member and we want them to do it. I'll say, well, here's the podcast recording. Why don't you have a listen to this and let them go through it and see if that helps them set up the Google My Business listing. The other thing that we've been using it for at the moment, and I've just got my first lead after a year and a bit, but my first lead off a podcast, having my own podcast. And it was a lady on social media who has been listening to my podcast for a long time. And then she made a comment about something about marketing, and I made a comment, and then she said, let me talk to you. I'd actually like to talk to you. And I said, cool. So we're busy in the moment talking about how we're going to work together. But she said she felt like she knew me and she felt like I was the right solution for her based on all the other marketing people she'd been to or spoken to based on listening to me from the podcast. So it definitely does build that know, like, and trust and shorten that sales cycle. I'll sneak this in as well. Another thing that we do is we use our podcast as an event, as a lead follow-up. So whenever we have leads come in, if we're trying to get the lead and they haven't converted, we will send them through the podcast and go, hey, I think this episode might be beneficial for you. Have a listen, let me know what you think. So we use them as little credibility things to warm up those people and just close that sales cycle. So how do you start your own podcast? As I said, it's a bit difficult for me. I don't have a tattoo yet. It is on my bucket list for this year, but I can't decide what and where. I even went to ChatGPT and said, knowing who I am and knowing that I don't really want people to see it and I really want it to stay with me forever, what tattoo do you think I should get? And ChatGPT actually drew them for me, recommended where I should put them on my body. So it was quite interesting. So anyway, I digress again, but yeah, so how do you start your podcast? So the Meaningful Marketing Podcast, one of the hardest things was starting the name. And often one of the reasons I didn't start sooner was because getting that name right was really important. I really think that you should always do market research. So go in and have a look at, who your competitors are in your industry. So if you're a kinesiologist, you want to have a look at all the other kinesiologists and what podcasts they've got, the types of name that they have. And you want something that's a little clicky, easy to say, not something that's too hard. I didn't want it to be online business marketing because there is already somebody who has a similar name to that. So I went and Googled it and I thought, what is my point of difference? My point of difference is I really want your marketing to be meaningful. I don't want it to be a hustle. Meaningful for you, the business owner, for the VA, for the clients, profitably, easy to manage. I want it to be meaningful. So the Meaningful Marketing Podcast, was the name. And the podcast strategist that I was working with, his suggestion, he wanted me to call it funnel vision. And I was like, that is not me at all. Like, so you really do have to trust your instincts as well when it comes to that. So when you do have your own podcast, at least you control the narrative and the strategy of how you're going to use it. You also control the audience that you're capturing and the influence and impact that you're going to make based on the overall outcome you're hoping to achieve with your podcast. So you can build a loyal community. So if you read my description, it says this is for purpose-led business owners and their marketing managers who want their marketing to be meaningful. And it's for people who want no fluff, no BS proven solutions. I was talking to a lady this morning and she said, oh my gosh, she's so over going onto podcasts. They just go blah, 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 blah. And then they say, do email marketing, but they won't tell you specifically what. And she goes, Chantel, I've listened to some of your podcasts more than once because you're actually telling us what to do. And when you have guests, you make them tell you what they actually did to get a result. Having those call to actions are really important. For me, it's always 3 call to actions. It's always choose a time to chat, go to the website, and a free lead magnet, always, because you've got to have a lead capture. You've also got to decide whether or not you're going to do it on your own or you're going to, if you're going to do it on your own, you're going to have guests. I started on my own and I really, hate's a strong word, but I do not like sitting in a room talking to myself. Even right now with having this live audience, I'm happy because I can see you, I can kind of engage with you and it fills me up. When I'm doing it on my own, I lose track. I want to read my notes. I'm less funny. And really the whole tone is different. So we started bringing in guests, but the whole point of bringing in guests is actually to leverage their network. So you bring in guests that already have the people that you have so that you can now be put in front of their audience. You also want people who know how to play the game. So I was talking about this with a podcast guest the other day, and I was saying, I've got a couple of influencers as guests on my podcast, and I've got a couple of micro influencers on my podcast. The micro influencers do so much better, and the reach is so much better than the influencers. And it's because the influencers they just don't need to market it. They don't need to leverage the content. They don't need to do anything. But the micro influencers are still stepping up. So they go out, they share stuff, and still weeks later, I had another one invite me as a collaborator, I think 2 days ago, if you have a look on Instagram. So she's gone and put herself onto my Instagram, and I love it. Go for gold. Good girl. And they're still playing the game because they're trying to grow, which is great. So you definitely want people who know how to play the game. And then you've got to be consistent and not salesy. So you've got to have some sort of structural format when you're doing it. So firstly, you want to ask yourself when you're planning the concept, you want to just go, what transformation or takeaway will they get from each episode? So for me personally, it's about how did you fall into business? Because I always believe your hero story is really important to share. So firstly, your hero story. How did you get into doing what you do? How is it meaningful for you? What meaningful strategies work in your business? What meaningful marketing strategies would you like to share with everyone else? And I basically stick around that so that at least the audience is going to get some juice and there's some sort of structure. I always say who this podcast is for and what is the problem I'm solving. And for me, I'm really just solving the whole thing about, what is working in marketing right now? How can we make it as easy for ourselves as possible, but also profitable? And then what tone or energy do you want to be known for? I mean, look, I can't fake that stuff, right? I'm fast. I am quick. I often may swear. It is what it is. I can't pick that tone. That is my tone, and it's obviously just going to appeal to some people and not for others. And then you've got to decide where will you be sending them. So as I said, you want to make sure that you've got those call to actions in your actual podcast as well. And then when you're repurposing the podcast, it's really difficult because when we repurpose the podcast, I'll just put this in here now, we have got the YouTube channel podcast. So we want to share that so we can grow the YouTube podcast, but then we also want to grow the podcast. So now we send them to the website, which has Apple, Spotify, and all the different platforms on there, because we want to make sure the website's getting traffic, the actual podcast places are getting traffic, because if they don't get traffic, then you won't get momentum. And then you've got the YouTube one as well. So because I entered an award, I was nominated finalist in the Podcast of the Year award. It's my second nomination now for this year. We had a look at our insights, and I'm getting 1,573 downloads a day, which is whoop insane. So it's really, really good. So, and why? Because we repurpose the crap out of that. So we make it work, but we're constantly talking about like, oh, this week we better send to YouTube. Now we better send to the website, and now we better send to Apple. Now we're going to send to Spotify. Like, we've got to keep making sure that everyone's getting touched in their special place, so that we can, so we can actually grow our audience. Right. So you want to choose a name that's searchable. It's easy to say, it's memorable, searchable. So many people come up with cryptic names, and it just drives me nuts. You want to make sure that it's specific. So as I said, cryptic. A lot of people do very like cryptic, blah-de-blah, and you've got no idea what it is. And it does need to align with your brand and your message. So super important. So the Meaningful Marketing Podcast speaks directly to business owners who are tired of shallow, scattered strategies and want marketing that works with intention. As I said, you want to decide if you're going to do it on your own, or if you're going to do interview, if you're going to do a hybrid. My concern with the interview, like, I'll be dead honest with you, the reason I was reluctant to start and getting guests in was because I didn't want the guests to come in and share all their juice and their glitter, and then I couldn't actually comment on it. I wanted to make sure that I established myself as an expert. So when guests come on my podcast, I say to them, I'm not interviewing you. Whenever we talk about something, I'll let you talk about it, but I'm always going to share my tips and my strategies, and I want to give my input. Whereas when you watch a lot of other guests, they just ask them questions, and then they just sit there, and then they're not establishing themselves as the authority. They're not establishing themselves as like the expert. They're basically establishing the other people as the expert. So that I struggled with in the beginning. I've worked around that now, just by setting clear boundaries with guests when we come in. And you'll hear that, because else I wouldn't be able to repurpose the content. If I was to repurpose the content, it would just be of the guests talking, sharing their magic, and then I'm not sharing my magic. So, and the whole purpose of the podcast, it costs me a lot of money in time, energy, and effort, is to share my juice and my glitter. Cool. So let's talk about the tech setup. You really want to keep it simple. There's a lot of people that are just using Zoom or Riverside or Zencaster, which you can do. I have done ones previously just through Zoom like this. I don't like a headset. I had a headset, and the end of the day, I felt squashed. So I just made the decision. I'm not wearing a headset. I had an earpiece. People could hear it knocking, and I was like, no. And I think with the sound and with the sound and the video, I feel like it's good enough now, and people don't care anymore as much as they did in the beginning. Like, remember, they had green screens and everybody wanted a perfect thing. I just think people don't care anymore. I don't know, maybe you care. I don't care anymore, especially if you're listening. All right. I like a video because if I have a video, it means I've got extra content for reels. Okay, I don't have to do audiograms. Video gets more views than audiograms gets, right? So for editing, we use Descript. I love Descript. It's amazing. We can cut out the audio, we can cut out the video, and we get all the transcript as well. A microphone, you can get a microphone if you want. And then, of course, your visuals and that you can just create in Canva. So all our visuals and that we just create in Canva. All our intros, outros, and everything is done in Canva. I've done things a little bit differently this time because I kept procrastinating, and you know that my dogs always bark in the background, and the postman comes at this time of the day every day. And so I made the decision, I'm sure it was last year, April, made the decision that I was going to hire a studio. So I have a studio that I hire out once a month on the Gold Coast, and I go into the studio. Now, why do I like that? Because I go in and I record 3 sessions. So I could book in 3 guests back to back. More than 3 destroys me, absolutely destroys me. So I do 3 back to back. I hire it out for the morning. They take it, and then they put it on all the podcast platforms. They give me the audio and the video, and my team then put it on YouTube and repurpose all the content. So that is what we do with our podcast. I love it because I'm now meeting all the people on the Gold Coast, and every time someone comes to the Gold Coast, I'm like, come meet me in the studio. Obviously, I need to navigate that, which is a bit difficult. The other thing a lot of people will do is they have a pre-podcasting interview, and I don't do that. So many people will say, let's jump on a call quick. Let's chat about what we're going to chat about on the podcast. Then you book your podcast in 2 weeks' time. Then you go, what were we going to talk about again? And maybe you've got your notes, and it's just not flowing anymore because you might be in a different vibe. So what I do is I allocate an hour for each of my guests. When they come in, we sit and we have a chat for 10 to 15 minutes. I obviously know who they are already because I've pre-stalked them. I mean, I teach stalking. It's definitely something you should do. And I've already strategically chosen them, so they're not strangers, complete strangers when they come to me. But I look for the angle that's, I don't look at, is this guest going to get the most out of this? I'm looking at the angle for my audience. What can my audience get out of this person? So I'm looking for that person's juice and glitter. And I'm going, oh my gosh, like they will absolutely love that. They'll love that angle. So for example, we had I think it was Kevin Bees on it. And it was like, I was talking to him and he was talking about sales psychology and he spoke about other amazing things. But I was like, no one else in my podcast has done that. So let's go and talk about sales psychology and then let's talk about how that relates to my audience. And I let them know who my audience is. And I say, your content needs to be about that. It needs to be about the Meaningful Marketing Podcast. And then this is the angle. What are your 3 steps going to be? These are the additional questions I'll ask you. So I do that right then and there just before because it's forefront of mind. The other thing is that you then want to make sure that that you have all their handles, that you get all their handles from them. If you don't know what a handle is, a door handle, your handle is your @. So your @ and your hashtags, so your links to all your platforms are your handles. You have to make sure that you've got all your handles, that you have all their handles so that you can tag them when it goes live. Why? Because it's now going to go onto their platform and now you're going to get more eyes on your stuff. All right. And that is the whole purpose. The other thing you need from them is, and it's you need it for yourself, but you also need it for them, is you need a free resource that is relevant to that audience. So please don't just give some generic whatever. You've got to go, right, I am on a podcast. This podcast is for, let's see what this podcast is for. This podcast is for health, wellness, and fitness business owners who are starting out. I'll go, oh, you know what? I've got my 21 content ideas, which will help you. And I'll give it to them. I'm not going to probably give them my VA marketing checklist because they're starting out, right? So I'm not going to give them that. So you want to make sure that the free thing that you give them is relevant. And if you're on a podcast, you'll give it to the person whose podcast you're on. They always allow you to announce it at the end. Slow down. That is probably one time that I slow down. If I'm on someone else's podcast, that is the most important part. This is how you can connect with me. And I slow down, I tell them where, and I try to repeat it twice before the podcast guest shoots me away and gets me off. But you want to make sure that if your name is spelled funny, spell it out. I spell it out on the podcast so that it's there, just so they can find it. Cool. So how do you get high quality guests? There are actually some Facebook groups. You can go into Facebook groups called podcast guests and podcast be a guest, podcast I'm a host. There's a couple of different ones that you can go in and you can put out a post and say, this is who you are and this is what you're looking for. In the olden days, I just went on anybody's podcast. Now I don't, unless they have got a huge audience and they've got stats and they've got a big social media platform. I don't waste my time anymore. But when you are starting out and you are little and they are little, 100% support each other, do it, but please make sure that you leverage it, because if you don't leverage it, it's not going to happen. So you want to make sure that you've got a similar audience. There's no point if you're talking about, I don't know, peas and zucchini, and they talking about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. You've just got to make sure the audience is the same, else there's no point in doing it. Make sure they're active on social media. Make sure that that they've got something that's relevant to your audience that's going to be a good hook. So sometimes they tell me like what their name is, like what it's going to be, like the name of what they're going to talk on. And I go, oh, that's great. Yes, you can talk about that. And I'll reframe it and I'll do my research beforehand. Like, for example, we had the Bachelor. She should be in our next session. The Bachelor, Belinda Love, who was on The Bachelor. And, we came up with a really cool name. I can't remember what it is, but go to the Meaningful Marketing podcast and have a look. But we were talking about how when you set up your dating profile, it's the same as marketing. And it's a really good episode. You really should listen. But we came up with a really cool name, and the cool name gets lots of views. So names are really important, because obviously then people are likely to watch and they're likely to share. So coming up with a really cool name is really important. When you go onto someone else's podcast, go there and give them some really cool name suggestions. So for me, I was always known as how to get fast and free results online, and everyone's going to tune into that, right? Okay, cool. Hold on a sec. Did I just throw all my stuff down? Yes, I did. Great stuff. So how do you get onto a podcast, getting on a podcast as a guest? Well, firstly, they have ready-made audiences. This is super important. They've got ready-made audiences. So it's so really important for you to do it, because now you're going to go out to their database, social media, email marketing, blah, blah, blah. You're sharing your expertise and you get to share the pitch at the end, right? You also get to the backlinks and the SEO. So if someone else is searching for that person or for you, you're now going to be in each other's networks. So from an SEO point of view, that's really good. And it increases your authority in the association. So for example, and you guys can have a look at the end, but our website, which is called onlinebusinessmarketing.com.au, if you go to freebies and you go to podcast, you'll notice that before we just had the embedded podcast inside there. Now we've taken the transcripts and we've put the transcripts in there and the other people's, like the other guests' names, because it's increasing our SEO. So if anybody's going to be searching for Belinda Love, I'm now going to come up because she's now on my page on my website. So my content will now be in front of her audience. So we have taken the time now to build that page, put the transcript in and backlink, so that it's kind of like guilt by association. Okay, so it's one of the highest leveraging activities that you can do to build brand awareness and trust without spending it on ads. So you want to be able to find shows, obviously, that are relevant to you. Obviously, they've got your audience. You want to listen maybe to one or two of their episodes and see whether or not you actually want to hang with that person. And then you want to pitch a standout topic that solves a problem, answers a trending question, or brings a new insight. So again, you could use a platform like answerthepublic.com to see what are people searching for about this thing. Okay. And then you want to keep your pitch short, focused, and aligned with their goals. Right. The most important thing is that call to action, guys. At the end of the day, you don't just want to be sending them to like your website or a webinar that you're doing next week, because podcasts can last for 10 years. For like, they just keep coming up. It's the same as YouTube videos. We've got a YouTube video that's 4 years old that gets daily hits, and it's 4 years old. So you can't say right now, join my webinar in 2 weeks' time, because it's not relevant. Right? So you just want to slow down when it comes to that call to action. Make sure you send them something that's relevant. And I like to put it in the show notes as well as mention it live as well. Okay, so let's talk about repurposing your content. This is probably like the best. Oh, is it the best part? No, I like coming up with the podcast and doing the podcast, but I love the fact that I've got so much content to use. And this is really where you can get your ROI. So firstly, you can create a blog post from it. So you can take the podcast transcript, you can put it into ChatGPT, and you can ask it to create an SEO-rich blog, all right? You could then ask it to create an email or multiple emails, okay? So you could either one of two things go, hey, we just recently done a podcast, and here's some of the takeaways from the podcast, watch the podcast. Or you could send out an email and you could actually just talk about what you spoke about in that. So for example, with Belinda Loves One, I could be talking about how dating is the same, is setting up your dating profile is the same, and that if you set up your dating profile and you don't look anything like your pictures, how it's fake, how it doesn't build trust, and it's exactly the same in your marketing. So, and then I could just use that content without even, really talking about it. You could use it for social media captions. So you could do posts, you could do carousels. We do quotes. So we actually use ChatGPT. So we put the transcript into ChatGPT, say, find Chantel's best quotes in the best quotes or best tips, and it will create it. And then we go into Canva. And if you go into my Instagram, it's probably the best place to see it. Chantel Girardi, Online Business Marketing. You'll see we've got a template and it's just a quote, and it's Chantel and her quote. And then my team will write something as well. And again, they'll write the post from my words. So the good thing about this is now they're sounding like you. Your team are sounding like you more. It's so easy to sound like you when they're taking your words. You could do Google My Business updates. You can put it on YouTube. There's now a podcast section in YouTube, so you can put it in there, which is where ours is. And we've now got to repurpose that, add a thumbnail. Go and have a look at YouTube and you'll see what I mean. Add a thumbnail, put the podcast in there. So now we're leveraging YouTube as well as the podcast platforms. If you don't have a video, it's fine. So for example, some of my episodes don't have video because when I don't have a guest, I don't use video. And instead what we do is we've just got a really cool, like it's a thing that just does this, like it's just a little image that goes the whole way through like this with me talking in the background, almost like an audiogram. And again, if you want to have a look, just go into my YouTube channel and go to the podcast there and you'll see it, how it looks. And then you can create little clips or presentations or little ads or anything else that you want to do. My team will chop it up. They'll add the link to, we've got a Google Sheet, and in our Google Sheet, we've got all the content, all the snippets, and then we've categorized it and we've said this one talks about podcast marketing. This one talks about running webinars. This one talks about client generation. This one talks about SEO. This one talks about content planning. This one talks about VAs. So the next time we write an email or the next time we're doing any marketing, we can go, when we talk about that thing, we just go grab that snippet and put that snippet in. Transformative. If you don't have an asset library, go and create an asset library. An asset library is just simply where you go, these are all our podcasts and links, and this is what it's about. These are all our reels. These are all our testimonials. You want an asset library where you can just tap into it every time you want to talk about a certain something, which is awesome. So our particular podcast, as I said, it nurtures our audience and it nurtures our leads as well. We use it for that. It educates and empowers our clients. I've had clients come and work with me 5 years later, and that's based on the fact that they've stayed in contact with me over the years with the content that I've done. And when the timing's right, they come back to us. You can promote, obviously use it for promotion, and you can use it for your content marketing. So as I said, it's absolutely amazing what you can use it for. So we have created an SOP here on how you can repurpose the content. And the SOP is going to be given to our live audience. So in order to be part of the live audience, you do need to be a paying customer. You can check the comments below to find out how you can make that possible. So for our audience that is watching on YouTube, have a look at the onlinebusinessmarketing.com.au, or have a look in the description below if you'd like to be part of this live audience.